oftentimes people don't move forward because they don't know which thing they want to do, or they don't know where they should spend their energy. And one way we can make decisions are just doing the things. And what I've told some of my consulting clients is, we're going to get you towards that dream that you're looking for. Like, we're going to figure out what the steps are. We're going to start taking action. Like, we are going to get you there. And one of the things that you may find is that you don't want it.
Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat of Take the Doughnut, here to help you get inspiration and get donuts. I'm a motivational keynote speaker, but today I'm bringing you a Take the Doughnut interview with the one and only Katie Vernoy. Let me tell you a little bit about her, and then she'll tell you more. So Katie is a therapist, coach, consultant, and speaker with Evolve to Thrive Consulting, as well as the co-host and co-founder of Therapy Reimagined and the Modern Therapist's Survival Guide podcasts. She does a lot of things. Hello, Katie. Welcome to your Take the Doughnut interview.
Thank you. Thanks, Melissa. It's good to see you. And I love your Take the Doughnut idea. It is very resonant. So I'm excited to talk about it with you.
Well, I'm excited to see where we go with it. And I will start, I'll get us off track to begin with, but it's the theme. What is your favorite donut? Let me ask you that question first, and then we'll get into your bio and all that other fun stuff.
All right. So my favorite donut, I have to choose one.
You don't. I'm not setting rules and limits on you here.
Well, there are actually times when like a plain donut just sounds delicious. And I think it's crazy because it's not sweet per se, but it's got that fried goodness. And then there's times when I'm like, oh, powdered donut or a maple bar, or I just could go on. I just love donuts. And I can't eat them in the morning because they're too sweet. So I have to have them later in the day as dessert, or I have to have like tons of protein before I can even eat a donut at the beginning of the day. So,
oh my goodness. But then when you go for it, you could really go for it. And you have all these favorite flavors.
Absolutely.
I love it. Well, I said a little bit about your bio up front, but tell us more about you. What do you want us to know?
So let's see. What do I want you to know? I think first and foremost, I've been a therapist for 22 years, I think. And that's when I started my training. So it's been less that I've been licensed and all that good stuff. But I think that's informed most of what I do. I interact with folks around work and around work trauma. I interact, I can say these things, I really can. I can interact around, different types of trauma, different types of challenges. And oftentimes what I see in the work that I do, and this is as a therapist, as a coach, as a consultant, all those things, are that so often people will get to a place where they want to move forward. They want to take a further donut, to use your metaphor here, and they get stuck because of past trauma or because of some sort of self-limiting beliefs or self-limiting behaviors, and they recognize that they have trouble getting past it. And so it's kind of, the work I do oftentimes pushes people beyond that stuck point into the next stage, whatever that is. And that's with executives and leaders and other therapists and stuff like that. But I think there's that element of so many of us don't take the donut because of stuff that's happened to us in our past, or the ways that we've been trained by society to behave. And so it becomes really interesting to kind of do that work to help people move forward. And so when you started talking about Take the Doughnut, I was like, oh, I love that, because it's so rich. It has so many different elements to it, whether it's gender identity, and oftentimes folks who have marginalized identities, so to speak, will not take the donut because they don't think they deserve it, or because society doesn't want them to have it. But sometimes it's I don't think I deserve it because I was told I was a piece of crap most of my life, right? And so there's that element of getting to a place where you can jump out and take what you want that I think oftentimes folks just need support in doing. So that's what I do.
I love that. We're sort of combining the two approaches right here on this interview, because for me, it's like, rah, 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 go do the thing, go take the donut, do your motivation. And you're like, yeah, but also there could be a reason you haven't yet. And let's look at that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Let's look underneath. Let's do all the things. And how does that make you feel? Let's do all the
look under the box,
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think all of that goes into this process, which is why it's so interesting to have these conversations, because you get to find out, is somebody living more in the I'm moving forward or in the I'm still stuck right now space.
Yeah.
And you get to sort of talk through that. Well, we've talked a lot about the theme. Let me introduce the theme for those who haven't seen one of these interviews yet. If you haven't been aware of the Take the Doughnut idea, for me, that is an expression that means carpe diem. Seize the opportunity, seize the day. It came from this weird thing that happened in college where I left a donut on a table, actually, and it became an object lesson for me and what it looks like to leave opportunity on the table. And so if you haven't heard that story yet, I'll link a video here so you can see that. But this whole conversation is about going after what you want and what that looks like in actual practice. So Katie, I'll ask you this question just to open it up here. How are you with going after goals? What's that process like for you?
I think I go back and forth with shiny object syndrome and holding back. And neither of them are, I think, especially helpful. And so I work really hard to make sure that I don't just jump to the next cool thing and start after it and then not finish it. But I also don't want to stay in analysis paralysis and not jump on any opportunities. And so for me, what that looks like is really spending a little bit of time and taking a dive into what is this opportunity in front of me and how do I determine, do I leap forward or do I move more cautiously or do I purposely leave it on the table, right? And I think for me that doesn't always line up. Sometimes I make good decisions, sometimes I don't, but I think trying to find that balance between being thoughtful enough but also not being too slow in pursuing something, that's where I kind of keep doing my work on that.
So it's what I find interesting about that answer is that that's a lot about like how you initiate the process and what that looks like. So when you've decided to go for something, when you've decided that yes, something's going to happen, what do you do? What keeps you motivated once it's in progress?
I think the first thing is deciding to do something isn't doing it. And so the very first thing I do is try to get very strategic and make an action plan. Because if we don't have something on our calendar, if it's just sitting on a to-do list that keeps moving down the to-do list, we're not actually taking an opportunity, just deciding to do it. And so for me, it looks like setting dates, identifying the steps I want to take, making the steps small enough so that I can actually make progress on them in a reasonable way. There's looking at why I'm doing it and trying to get that foundational belief system around it. Small things, yeah, you don't need to do this, but like if you're doing something that's really hard, you want to make sure you know why you're doing it so that on the tough days, you keep coming back to your why. I mean, Simon Sinek and start with why is something I love. So I think it's that element of have a plan, understand why you're doing it, and execute the smallest steps and keep going. I talk about it as a ladder with a lot of little rungs. So
it's a good visual and it has upward progress. So that feels nice as well.
Yeah.
So are there any particular types of challenges that you tend to encounter like every time you're going after something, maybe a specific brand of challenges that always seems to get in your way?
I think, excuse me. I think when I start into something, and I say we because I have a business partner and we've had some different things that we do together, sometimes the idea is so big and it's so exciting that we'll say we're going to do it, and we have kind of the beginning of a ladder. But oftentimes I think the ladder has just the last couple rungs. And so like, you've got a 2-story ladder, but you've only got the top 6 feet of rungs, right? So you're jumping, you can't reach that high up. And I think for me, I work really hard to try to get down to those very small steps. And that's what I tell my clients to do, right? Like I've got this whole thing, like, oh, you gotta make the ladder, gotta have small enough rungs, blah, blah, blah. But I think the thing that is so hard is that really breaking it down small enough can feel like you're not even making any progress. And so it can feel demoralizing when you're like, okay, so I need to do these things. So the first day, all I'm going to do is set up a spreadsheet. It's like, oh, that's so not sexy. That's so not fun. And I feel like I've done nothing, right? And so it's like making it small enough and getting enough momentum to kind of the escape velocity, like get going. I think that's the hard part when it's such a big idea.
Yeah. So it feels better to you when it's like the sexy task that really shows the progress, but not always those little detail oriented.
Or like the visionary stuff, right? The stuff that's like, oh, it's going to be this amazing thing. What is that going to look like?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes amazing things don't look so amazing on the way there.
No, not at all. Sometimes it's really awful. I think we've sat at meetings like that where we're like, okay, we're trying to put on a conference during a pandemic. And it got real tough.
Will the pain ever end? Yeah, it's it happens. It's the reality when you go for something.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to be in the weeds for a little while before it looks like anything resembling what you were aiming for. Yeah. But so when we talk about that, let's think historically. Like, what's the biggest donut you've ever taken? It could be personal, it could be professional, but when I say that, what comes to mind for you?
I mean, there's been a lot of different ones. I mean, starting a podcast was a big donut, but that we just kind of took because we needed it to market a conference. There's other things that I've probably done, but the one when you asked me the question, way before this conversation, that I thought about was going after being a board member for my professional association. And I didn't run in the election, but I had somebody say, hey, we need to appoint somebody, you really should apply. And as I was going through the application process, initially I started with like, maybe this will be interesting, maybe it won't be interesting. But as I dug into the application, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to be doing. And so I went all for it. I called the board members because I knew that those were the votes that I needed. I was, interacting with them to figure out how they think, what they do, looking at all the stuff that I could do to kind of make myself appealing to the board members and not inaccurate, just, taking steps to get to know them. And then the morning of the board meeting, when they were going to choose who they were appointing out of the 5 of us or something, I went to breakfast. So almost literally taking a donut, right? And I had no idea I wasn't supposed to go. I had no idea I wasn't invited. I went to this hotel. They paid for me to stay there. I called the front desk. I said, where's the breakfast for the camp board? And they told me where it was. I showed up. No one told me to leave, and had a wonderful breakfast where everybody got to know me. No one else showed up. I was like, oh my gosh, why is nobody else here? This is like exactly where everybody should be. And I got appointed. And so I put a lot of effort into this, and subsequent, because I was on the board for 5 years, I saw people getting appointed just filling out the application, and then I never heard from them. And the board started making it so that people would have a chance, and kind of systematizing that. But after my jumping into this breakfast, the poor camp board never got another breakfast again. It was always on their own. There was not this extra thing that people could come to. I was like, oh my gosh, I ruined it for everyone.
You took the donut so hard, there was none left for anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it was something where I really went after that type of service, that type of ability to, that position, and I got it. And apparently I kind of stepped over some lines I didn't even know I was crossing in order to get it, but it worked.
And in the end, it all worked out well. I mean, I think you're a woman after my own heart. I love this story. I just, and because at the end of the day, like, how hard really were any of those steps? Like, you went to a breakfast, and it was part of a process of getting recognition and making connections and moving yourself towards the thing that you wanted. And it was just a breakfast too, like it doesn't always have to be so hard.
Well, I mean, it was also phone calls, which I'm like, how did I find people's phone numbers? I don't know, but it was like, it was something where it just made sense to me,
Yeah. Well, now you have a last laugh.
Well, it speaks to the ask for forgiveness, not permission mantra.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's talk about what you're working on now. Is there a donut that's currently in progress for you?
I think I'm in the process of eating some donuts and I'm looking for new donuts, to be honest. But I'm in an interesting space professionally because there's some things that are going really well. My practice, I'm having a really positive experience with my therapy practice. I've got some new things that, are starting to percolate for my consulting and coaching. Podcast is going well, but I'm actually solidifying things, like making sure all the systems are in place. And so I'm actively trying not to jump out to shiny object syndrome. And so there's not any specific donuts that I'm trying to grab. But I feel like the things that I've pursued in the past, going out on my own for practice, starting a podcast, starting my own consulting business and providing different types of services through that. I feel like those things I'm kind of reaping the benefits, but I also am having to do like the maintenance before I can really start something new, because I spent a lot of years just feeling overwhelmed. I had so many donuts and I couldn't take bites out of all of them. So
now it's time to savor.
It's time to savor. I'm savoring some donuts.
Okay, well, I mean, you are probably inspiring people who are listening to this, and they may be thinking to themselves, I have a donut that I want to take. What do I do? So Katie, let's do this sprinkle some encouragement section. And what advice would you give people? What recommendations would you give if there's somebody out there who personally or professionally has a donut that they want to take and they just don't know where to begin?
I mean, it's so different based on the type of donut. So it's going to be very general sprinkles. But oftentimes people don't move forward because they don't know which thing they want to do, or they don't know where they should spend their energy. And one way we can make decisions are just doing the things. And what I've told some of my consulting clients is, we're going to get you towards that dream that you're looking for. Like, we're going to figure out what the steps are. We're going to start taking action. Like, we are going to get you there. And one of the things that you may find is that you don't want it. But the donuts that we have out there that we want to take, like, we don't know if we don't actually take any steps towards them. They're these things that are hanging over our head that we're like, oh, I really want to do this thing, but I just don't have the time. And so being able to actually carve out the time and make the ladder and do the steps, sometimes you realize I'm still not doing it. Or, you know what, now that I'm taking the steps, this isn't what I wanted at all. And the reason I say this is some encouragement to just get going is that if you say, I don't know if I want to do A or B, if they're not mutually exclusive, start taking small steps towards both. Take some action towards each one and see which one's more aligned, which one you're more drawn to, and start moving forward. But I think some people have these big opportunities that they feel like they're just not taking, and it closes other opportunities off, because they're like, oh, well, I want to do this thing, and they don't even look at this thing over here, but they don't even really want it once they actually get to it. So I think it's taking steps to test, is this for me, and move forward so that you can actually do those, so you can determine, is this my thing or not?
That's such a good point. And that's something I've been thinking about a bit lately, because I've had a couple things where my priorities have shifted unbeknownst to me at some point. And you start moving towards something and you're like, is this actually, do I actually care? Like, wait a minute, hold on a second. That's been a little bit jarring for me in recent years, where it's, especially if it's a donut that I had taken before and thought that I still wanted, because that's how I had always been. It's like, well, it is okay to grow and change, and and it doesn't mean you're giving up on something if it's just you realize you don't want it. Like, what is the point? So it's a really interesting thing for you to unpack there. Well, is there anywhere where we can you're doing a lot of things, so where can we find you? What do you have coming up? What do you want to plug here? I can put links in the description, but Katie, what links do I put?
All right. So katievernoy.com is the easiest one. That has most of my stuff, and it links out to the other things. my therapy practice, I think, falls under like Katie Vernoy, executivetherapy.com, something you can get there both places. But for anybody that's a helping professional, I do recommend taking a look at the podcast, the Modern Therapist Survival Guide, mtsgpodcast.com, because we've got a lot of stuff where we're talking about the profession and how you can survive it, but also thrive within the profession that is becoming more and more needed, I think, as a whole. So I think that's 3 links. Is that enough?
Oh, you could do as many as you want. I'm not limiting you. I'm placing no limits on this. But
No
that does sound
limits
like a
on
good
me.
start.
No limits.
Everybody, be sure to check out those resources. Katie has a whole lot of information, so much information out there. If you even just start going down the rabbit hole of that podcast, you'll never come out. It'll be great. You'll love it so much.
Like over 300 episodes. It's crazy.
It's amazing. It's a huge achievement. And there's a lot of really interesting content in there. So everybody check those resources out. And if you liked this video, be sure to like and subscribe, because we have plenty of cool interviews coming up to inspire you. Katie, thank you for joining in and sharing some thoughts about what it looks like to go after what you want and helping to inspire people to do the same.
Well, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Okay, everybody, you know what to do. Get inspiration, get donuts.
Bye.